Yo, what's up? It is your man MCM, and this is your Probably Right podcast, and you're welcome to my house anytime. Okay, figuratively speaking, of course. I got a couple topics. Today is February the 3rd, 2021. I'm going to go through a couple things with you today. I'm going to talk about GameStop a little bit. I'm going to talk about real estate a little bit. I'm going to talk about the new $6.8 million stimulus package for Torontonians that are black or who identify as black. We're going to talk about, what else we going to talk about? I'm going to give you a little history about my people in Canada and Jamaica and blah, blah, blah at the end of all this. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is the GameStop fiasco. All right, ready? Here we go. So, Reddit mafia, I think most of you probably know by now, Reddit dudes on that are people, I should say dudes. People on Reddit decided to band together to mess around with the hedge fund people. As you probably know again, they raised the stock by buying and buying and buying because it was believed that the hedge fund faction decided to short the stock so much so that it was like killing them. So people who were invested in GameStop and in different ways decided to change something, and they all banded together and bought stock, and it raised it. And I think most of you know that what hedge fund people do is they purchase something or they borrow stock from people, and then they sell it back and they make a profit, and the person who owns it makes a profit. And usually companies like GameStop usually are shorted for better or lack of a better terms. But I mean, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination pro on stocks and bonds, and I don't invest, and I don't have a horse in that race, as they say. But I understand that it really changed a lot of things, a lot of people's thinking, realizing that the little person can do something in society, even though the big people, the people with the money, can stop it most times. I think, as you're going to hear in a second from this video, from this clip from Jordan Belfort, that I think the little man has finally found a loophole that they can start acting on, which I actually saw a couple years ago when the stock market and the real estate market changed in Toronto a little bit. So here's the clip.
He is Jordan Belfort, the original Wolf of Wall Street, and we're happy to have him on tonight. Jordan, thanks so much for coming on the show. So,
my pleasure.
You've participated in this from every possible angle. You've watched it for decades. What do you think is going on here with the Reddit guys?
Well, I think you hit it right on the head, and that was my thesis for tonight, was this is really a convergence of a few different things. Number one, finally, the little guy has the ability to fight back through a convergence of technology, the platforms for trading, the ability to communicate as a group. So in the past, you could have never done this before. So there are two types of short sellers in this world. There's legitimate ones that's a natural part of the market, and there's another part that are these hedge funds that gang up and literally will short a stock almost down to zero, out of business. They try to spread negative news, they'll start investigations, and that's what has started with GameStop, massively overshorting the stock. And this, I think, as you said, connects to a far bigger thing than just trying to make a few bucks on a trade. This is about the end of the movie, The Big Short, where, like I said, all the bad guys went to jail. Ha, just kidding. No one went to jail. So I think everyone knows there's something really wrong in the pit of their stomach. You can silence people, you can deplatform people, you can break things with bleach spit and hammers and get away with it. Everyone knows whether you're on a Republican or Democrat, there's something wrong. That's why both sides of the aisle united on this one thing. You notice that? Both sides united because it was money sort of takes the politics out of it. So what happened here is these people, like if you actually dig into the boards, like I did, because my first reaction was, oh, there's a pump and dump. But no, it's really not what's going on. If you actually look at the messages, these people are mad. They have something they want to prove. It's not really about money. I mean, they want to make some money here, but they are angry as hell, and they're sick and tired of getting stomped out by Wall Street, which they have been forever, and they finally now have at least some ammunition to get back. The danger is it's going to end badly for these stocks, and I hope people, don't lose money in the process.
I wonder, though, I mean, now that this has happened, everybody knows it's happened, and that the hedge funds and Wall Street itself are more vulnerable maybe than anyone imagined, and the internet still exists. I mean, what does this portend going forward? I mean, we can't kind of continue as we have, can we?
Sure. No, so one thing Wall Street and hedge funds are very good at is closing gaps and finding these sort of inefficiencies and closing them up. So what these people on Reddit, and my hat's off to them, by the way, it was brilliant what they did, is they found a real inefficiency in the market and a gap where something had been dramatically overshorted and they could actually, get enough buying power. They did that. Wall Street now knows that. So I would be very shocked if hedge funds would create another situation so quickly where it was so overly shorted that it would be that easy for people to come in as a group and bring the stock back up and start a short squeeze. So that might end. But I believe this is a paradigm shift right now. The little guy finally is equipped. Information travels instantly now. You see, it used to be only the big guys. They paid the analysts. They had, all this stuff happened before the little guy. The big guys were colluding doing this stuff, right? So now the little guy finally has the ability to play that same game, at least somewhat. And there's going to be a radical change.
It's not
going to be the same.
I hope you got that. I hope you understand what's happening is what they don't like. And who is they? They know who they are. And if you know who they are, you're probably right. Anyhow, they don't want little people to succeed. And it's kind of like the phrase, to those who have much, more will be given, and those who have less, even the little that they have will be taken away. It's actually scriptural in the Bible. Check it out. King James. Anyways, I cracked myself up. But honestly, that's what basically had happened with the real estate market in Toronto. If you were listening closely to that clip, it's kind of cool how Jordan Belfort was able to say all what he said in such a short period of time. There's videos that are probably 2 times as long or 3 times as long that didn't even give you half of the information. So you may want to check back and go and check it out. It was Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street, they call him. That guy, they made a big movie. I think it was Leonardo DiCaprio who starred in the movie. It was a crazy thing. Anyhow, this guy actually knows what he's talking about, and he's done a lot. So maybe you do your little research and check it out. But how it is glued to the situation in Toronto, I would say, as far as the real estate market is concerned, or the whole of Canada is concerned, is when in 2017 they entered this new thing called stress test. And basically, I'll read a little paragraph. It says, the mortgage rate comparison website ratehub.ca published a scenario looking at the impact of the stress test rule on families earning $100,000, putting down 20% on a 3.095-year fixed rate more amortized over 25 years. Now, it says, under the current rules, the family could qualify for a house worth $706,000. But after this new stress test, which is going to make people actually have to qualify at 4.89, basically 5%, that same family that would generally be able to own, or maybe not generally, but at that time, who could own a house that was $706,000 would be brought down to $559 instead. $559,000 roughly. So basically what that means is they're pushing you back. Now, what was happening in Toronto in early spring 2017, say March, even February, a little bit winter to March to April, houses were selling at crazy amounts of houses were selling. People were flipping houses left, right, and center. And people were coming up. For lack of a better term, people were literally coming up. In other words, people were buying houses. People who had bought houses for, say, $400,000, $500,000 were being able to sell their houses for $1,900,000. And supposedly the outcry was that people can't afford anything. And they made it all about, like, I don't want to say mainstream media, but if you watched regular news on a regular day, on a regular channel, they were talking about how rent increases and real estate increases. They tied the two together, and the whole narrative was being pushed that nobody can afford rent. And where are the people with low income going to live because prices and real estate prices are so high, when generally, not always, but a lot of the people who are renting can't afford to buy anything anyway. They can just afford to rent. And apparently everything was affecting everything, and rent went up and real estate went up, and everybody was unhappy. Not true. There was a lot of people who were happy. There was a lot of people who were, as I said before, coming up in the world. They were making $100,000, $200,000 profit, $300,000, $400,000 profit, because the properties that they had previously bought were now worth, some were worth double than what they bought. So there was a lot of people flipping homes. A lot of people thought it was ethical because we're in a capitalist society. No matter what anybody says, we're in a society where you can get everything you can get because you deserve it, because you have your education, you know, and you have the knowledge and you have the skills to trade something that you have for more assets, usually money or property. And if you know how to do it, then that's the way it works in this society. But they put an end to it with that correction, that stress test. They had one first that slowed everything down, and then they brought another one. I think that's the one that I'm referring to, whereas they made you actually have to qualify at 5%. So in other words, let's just say the interest rates were down to 2 or 1, or well, basically right now it's around 1 something. Even if you can qualify right now and buy a house technically and be able to afford your bills at 1%, 2%, they don't trust it. They don't want the whole market to go left if all of a sudden interest rates go up to 5. They want to know that you can afford your bills if your mortgage went up to 5%. And on the one hand, it makes sense because there are those people who will overstep their boundaries, but on the other, it doesn't, because people who maybe can't afford that at 5 would probably try to get out by then. And what everybody understands is when you're flipping houses and when you're selling product, there is risk involved. And they say that they're worried that people who were flipping homes or flipping their actual primary resident home would be out of a home if all of a sudden the interest rates went up on them, because I guess they wouldn't be paying attention, knowing that what was coming at that time, and blah blah blah. There'd be people out of homes and people couldn't rent, and it would be a huge disaster. But what we found out is also there was a lot of people coming to Canada at that time, and there was a lot of immigration. So people were always coming into Toronto, Canada, Vancouver, all over, into the cities, raising prices, because to tell you the truth, which a lot of people could probably tell you, when you're coming to a country like Canada or the United States, I would say in the last 40, 30 years, most of the people who come from those poorer countries, those third world countries, for them to even be, unless they come, somebody sends you money or you save up enough money for a trip and you get here and you just overstay, and try to get landed, as they call it, and then try to become a citizen either through a applying through a lawyer or through marriage or other means. There's people who just try to stay here, like illegal aliens, as some people would call them. But there's many people who tried to do it the proper way, and some people did it the wrong way. But the point is, the people who did it supposedly the right way, and that included students for some reason who could have owned property. Parents would send their children from other countries, and they'd come here, and they're financially well off, and they could buy property. And what was happening is it was causing a lot of competition in prices of real estate. And so they say. Now, we don't know how true that is, but I'm sure it was true to a certain extent, because at that time when that was going on, I was following a couple situations of people I knew personally who were trying to sell their homes, and a couple people who did sell their homes. And some of the people who were driving up the prices were people who hadn't been in Canada for a long period of time. And apparently it was even people who had no intentions of coming to Canada and were just purchasing them through agents, which is wild in itself. But I don't know how much of that really took effect as far as the people who weren't in Canada, but I do know that there were a lot of people who were newly immigrated to Canada who were able to purchase homes. And as I said before, a lot of the people who can do that from the third world countries, the people who are well off, which I probably didn't say earlier, people who were well off in their countries. So basically they were, for lack of a better term again, the big shots in the country that they were coming from, but would probably be seen as a small fry in this country, but able to afford a house. So a lot of people would come, I guess, as middle class or upper middle class, and would just be buying, and prices were just going up and up and up and up. And when they did this real estate correction, I would call it, in 2017, I think it was artificially done. And if you believe what I'm saying, then you'll also understand that house prices right now, and you can quote me, or you can check me, as they say, check it. Right now, as I said before, it is February the 3rd, 2021, and prices are skyrocketing right now in Toronto and surrounding areas in GTA. There are a lot of people selling in Durham, so the prices are kind of mid to high. But in Toronto, to get a Toronto home right now, it is crazy. Some of you are sitting on a gold mine. I don't know how long it's going to be a gold mine before the government steps in again and does something to bring prices down. So I believe it's coming. It might be interest rates rising to stop people from buying because they won't qualify. They know that if they raise up the interest rates a little bit, that people just won't buy those, $1.2, 1.3, $1.4 million houses anymore. Let's not even talk about the 2s and the 3s, as in the millions. But I think a correction is coming. So if you haven't already listed your home, I'm not telling you to list your home, but pause. Okay. So anyway, that's that. And as I said before, I think that's going to be more of a trend in the world. The stuff that happened with Reddit, I think there's going to be more of this gang kind of family mafioso kind of scene where a bunch of people from a bunch of different places are going to band together, having the same access to a lot of information. And how that works is, what I learned in Toronto here, I'll tell my friend over in Florida, and he'll get a little piece of information from somebody down south in Texas, and that person will get a little information from somebody in England, and the person from South Africa or the person from Jamaica will have a little bit of intel, and they'll tell two friends, and so on and so on and so on. Basically, we're all connected. There was one time, I look at fashion back in the day where you get a pair of shoes from a store in Toronto, and it would be the shoe that was in style 3 or 4 months ago in California and New York. Now that's not the case. With the good old internet, we all are pretty much privy to the same amount of information at the same time. Kind of like, I guess it's the herd mentality, kind of. It's like it snowballs. So whatever you know, you're gonna send it to your friends, or your family. One thing that through this pandemic has done is I personally have been connected to family overseas a lot more than I would normally be connected to them. I probably talk to people in England as much as I talk to people in Toronto during this lockdown phase. It's kind of funny. When you can't see anyone, anybody you talk to is just as close as anybody else almost. People were separated from their parents, their kids, their siblings, and they were already separated from the people in other parts of the world. But because we were all basically, it was like a cell phone, a computer, a tablet, and a Chromebook or whatever, we were all basically just as far from people in the city as we were from anybody across the English Channel, which, although torturing to a lot of people, it was also nice to talk to people that you wouldn't normally talk to, because usually you'd have the people, all the face-to-face interactions that you would have very little time for those, well, some of us would have very little time for those people, say on WhatsApp or on Facebook or wherever, Instagram, wherever you connect with your people. But now that everybody's basically left the same thing, it's like, I can click on John over here and I can click on Mary over here. Now they're in two different parts of the world, but because they're basically the same distance from me, I can connect to either of them or both of them at the same time in a group chat, which I think group chats were huge over this time. And I'm surprised. I would like to know what the stocks are on some of those things. Like I think what Zoom was worth, I can't remember what they were worth. I think they were worth like 600,000 or something like that before the pandemic started, and they made some crazy gain to like 3 or 4 billion or some craziness like that. But basically all these apps and all these programs that keep people connected remotely have really come up, kind of like the big box stores like Amazon. This is how we had to shop. This is how we had to connect. So if you were in those stocks, good on you. All right, next topic. All right, so we're gonna talk about a little situation that happened in Toronto, and I have a couple clips that I want you to watch. So I'm gonna throw to them first, and then I'll be back to talk about it. It's gonna be Mayor John Tory and another gentleman, and you can just hear their thoughts on what the black community needs, and you can take that for what it's worth. You can even take it from, forget it. Here we go.
The city is putting together this $6.8 million partnership in partnership with 12 community agencies to provide enhanced support for Black Torontonians, as well as targeted the Black community vaccine outreach program. There's a lot of talk today about vaccination hesitancy, and here's a little bit more about this plan from the chair of Toronto Board of Health, Joe Cressy.
The disproportionate impact of COVID on the Black community, it shouldn't surprise us. In public health, we've long known that it's your postal code, not your genetic code, that is the biggest driver of health. Access to housing, access to good jobs, access to health and social services. Those are the factors that determine who gets sick and who doesn't, who lives and who dies. That's what structural racism is. That's what it looks like in real time. COVID just exposed this.
City Council is meeting again today, but ahead of the meeting, officials discussed a new program focused on fighting COVID-19 across Toronto's Black community. For more, let's bring in CP24's Jamie Goodfroy. Tell us how this will work.
Yeah, well, this program is going to provide enhanced support for the Black community, which frankly has been disproportionately hard hit by the pandemic. The numbers telling an alarming story. 24% of all hospitalizations are from people from the Black community, and given the fact that they only make up 9% of the population. This really, paints a picture of how disproportionate this community is being impacted throughout this pandemic. And one of the things that's been talked about in this committee meeting today is vaccination hesitancy. And the mayor talked about launching an awareness campaign to make sure that not only the entire city knows about the safety of these vaccines, but particularly there's been a lot of hesitancy within the Black community about taking it. So here's a little bit more from the mayor on that.
Vaccine hesitancy, which would cause people to be hesitant even to go to a place we might have established for the administration of a vaccine when the time comes, hopefully not too long from now. Vaccine hesitancy is high among Black residents. And that means we have to do everything possible to provide them with the information they need to get around and get over that hesitancy. The city has partnered again with community agencies to provide COVID-19 health and safety awareness in Black communities and work with experts to prepare for and to support our immunization.
All right, here we go. So, did you listen to those things? Did you listen to those guys? It's kind of funny when they say it's not your genetic code, but your postal code that makes a difference in the Black community. One thing I can say to anybody listening to me right now from the Black community, guys, I'm missing. So can you please let me know where you all are so I can hang out with y'all? Because I've been looking for the Black community all my life, and I've been living in the Toronto area all of my life. So just saying, the Black community. I hate that term. I can't even tell you how much I hate that term. I don't know where the hell it is, but we're not all living in the same areas, and we're not living in the same living conditions. And they want to give $6.8 million to the Black community to help us to understand, to realize that we need the vaccine. Does anybody have any clue? Like, do you know why Black people don't trust that we need the vaccine? Well, listen, we've all been sitting home hearing the same information on YouTube, the same information on Instagram, the same conversations on WhatsApp, the ones that they would allow us to have, because I know that they disallowed so much information. It's like a video would come out and in 5 minutes or an hour or half a day or 3 days, the video would be taken down. There was so much information that nobody could figure out what was true, and it was difficult to divide the truth from the untruths. And basically, I've always considered Mayor Tory to be a mild-mannered, nice guy, seemingly, or at least mild-mannered. But I mean, I'm not going to go on with the stereotype of politicians or whatever it is. I could give you my take on all the politicians, but they'd probably be a little bit skewed because they'd come with my experience, they'd come with my biases, they'd come with a lot of stuff. But this $6.8 million kind of reminds me of that $221 million business loan for black companies. None of this stuff makes any sense to me. The reason why, okay, let's see. Mayor Tory explains that Black people in Toronto need to be given an explanation as to why they need the vaccine. So already, if you're in the Black community, if you're Black and you identify as Black and I'm not talking about men, women, children, sexual orientations and belief systems and religion. I'm just, your skin's black, or you're light skin, or you're dark skin, or whatever. Your hair's nappy, your hair's straight, but you're dark. Like the Black community, okay? So I'm talking to everyone, and don't feel offended if I'm not speaking specifically to you and what you identify within that Black community, because the Black community is huge, and we don't all look like me, and we don't all look like Michael Jackson, we don't all look like Prince, we don't all look like Drake, we don't look like Steph Curry, we don't all look like Dikembe Mutombo, we don't all look like Bol. If you know who these people are, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you probably know what I'm talking about when I'm saying this. We are all different shades, colors, sizes, orientations, religions, I'm just lumping them all in because that's what they did to us. Okay, I'm lumping us all in, and I'm just saying the black community. Now, they want to give $6.8 million to the black community to help us to understand, to form a task force. You're not getting any of this money, guys. Now, if you're lucky, or should I say people, sorry. You're not getting any of this money because he wants to form a task force to help us to understand so we can get around and get over our hangups on vaccines. So in other words, you're calling us stupid. That's what it sounds like to me. And it's going to sound that way to a lot of people who are high school, college, university educated, or even none of those. You're just a person who's read a book or had a conversation. You'll understand that the way that is put doesn't sound good at all. And it's not only your area code. It's not only what kind of food you eat. It's also your education that some of us have been kept from. There's been a lot of us who were born in the 70s, back in the day when it was the mandate to a child's a little hyperactive, put him in special ed. A kid's a little bit slow, put him in special ed. There was times that I know people personally who you just had to have an accent from a West Indian country. And first of all, you were Jamaican. And that's an inside joke, I guess, between me and a lot of West Indian people, even Africans. You could have come back in the 80s and 70s from wherever you came from. As long as you had a little twang in that language, you were Jamaican. And most of the islands outside of Jamaican people were offended by them calling you Jamaican, unless it had to do with Bob Marley. Then it was okay. But besides that, if you were Bayesian, Barbados, if you're from Barbados, are you from Guyana, are you from Trinidad, are you from St. Kitts, are you from St. Martinique, are you from St. Martin, are you from St. Lucia, are you from Nigeria, are you from South Africa? Nobody wanted to be called a Jamaican. And that was just the bottom line. Nobody wanted it. But then again, many of us Jamaicans didn't want to be called any of those other islands either. So anyways, the bottom line is $6.8 million to 1.2 million people. Okay, 1.2 million people. That's the number. And I'm just using old numbers. I've decided not to get too updated with the numbers because those 5-year-old stats are fact. In 2016, there were 1.2 million people in Toronto who identified as black. Now, I know that I wasn't counted as one of those people because every census, I always neglected or refused to put my color. On every form, I never put that. I guess I'm skeptical, so I always assume when I'm putting my color or my whatever it is on a form that you're going to slot me over here. And the truth is, maybe I don't want to be slotted over there. Just like a lot of people don't want handouts. And then there's a lot of people who do want handouts. Well, I happen to be one of those people who just want an opportunity. I don't want you to give me something all the time. And here you get that, and here you get this. But if you check it, okay, just doing some little math, and trust me, I suck at math. If you have 6.8 million, let's just say they was going to give everybody a little something, the 6.8, and there's 1.2 of us. Just do the math, divide it. Y'all getting about $5. Now, obviously, not all black people in the black community are hard up for money, but there are a lot of people. There is a huge discrepancy in what one person can own and what this person can have, or what kind of transportation this person has and what transportation that person has, or what kind of home this person owns, or what that person owns. So 6.8 million is peanuts. Okay, straight up. For 1.2 million people, that's nothing. Now, it really reminds me of that money that they said that black-owned businesses were going to get last year. There's going to be this task force, and the banks are going to help, and they're going to divvy out $221 million to black-owned companies. You know what I'm thinking? As a guy who doesn't own a black-owned business, who probably could run one, guys, with my situation and with the education that I got and some of the things that I was left out of or I wasn't privy to or wasn't able to get into or for whatever reason wasn't interested in, I don't own, so I don't get into that. There's help for black owners or black business owners, but what about the people? Where's the help for the people who weren't able to own anything? And that would include the people who weren't able to own a house. A lot of time you have to have collateral to own a business. What happens if you've been renting and you don't even own a car? Or what if you're working minimum wage? What if all these people? I don't know. These stimulus packages and these incentives for black people, to me, sometimes just seem so ridiculous. And the undertones of how these politicians are speaking about the black community, it just makes you sick to your stomach, and it makes you not even want to accept whatever help that they say they're supposedly giving you, that half of us or more than half, or 80% of us, I'm just going to throw numbers out, 80% of us don't even see. And the reason why I'm throwing numbers out is because apparently due to the COVID pandemic, 70% of students are feeling depressed, anxiety, bad eating habits. Everything is just horrible with children staying home. You know what makes me think about that is, what about all the children that are homeschooled? What about them? Maybe the reason why kids are feeling that is because they can't leave their homes and play with their friends, not because of school. There was a story that was saying that a girl was feeling more anxiety. She was bulimic, and because of the structure, without the structure of school and having to be somewhere and having something to do and a class to do or homework to do, apparently, she was feeling more of this and more of that. And I'm saying, no, it's not the actual school that the children are missing out. They're missing out on the interactions. And knowing what goes on at school, even the way school's set up when face-to-face is going to resume for many people, it's still not going to be half as normal. So, I guess we'll see. Check me, as they say. It's February 3rd, 2021. Go back to this video or this broadcast in a few months and see how things pan out. Anyhow, I hope this was interesting for most of you people. Let's see if I missed anything. It really would be nice to have a young Jamie, as Joe Rogan has, where, they kind of just flip through things for you and put things on a screen, and you can look at it and make a comment. So it is kind of difficult to actually sit here and do a podcast on your own and just keep going on and knowing what you're talking about. So I understand that I will obviously make mistakes, and some of my facts may be a little bit off, but this is the opportunity for you to do your own homework. That's about it. But I will go into a little bit. Okay, why do you think black people don't trust society? Anybody? Well, do we have to go back more than a year? Actually, it was on my birthday last year when George Floyd died, and the United States basically lost their mind, and all over the world, little communities of black people and those who would fight for or with them would realize that there was some regular injustices that were just continuing to happen to black people. Of course, it kind of all got phased out because we started to focus on different communities. They didn't focus enough, and I've seen it at my workplace. It was referred to as a disruption. It was referred to as a tragedy. It was referred to as a problem, and we're moving on. And the pandemic was going on, and that's how it was. But there's a reason why. I mean, I talk about my history a little bit, and I said, like, I think it was, okay, my parents were married in 1962. They came to Canada in 1966. My older brother and sister were born in 63 and 64. Nice Christian marriage. They had their kids after. But anyways, they came to Canada in 1966. They came the year after the United States pulled out of Jamaica because of their partnership with Cuba and whatever, adjacent with Russia, whatever. But the bottom line is that was a difficult time for people in the West Indies. At least I know for a fact, and people in Jamaica, because as I said on another podcast, Jamaica's dollar was linked to the English pound, and it was, I think at that time, don't quote me, but it was worth at least what the Canadian dollar was worth, or it was just barely under, like maybe how the United States and the Canadian dollar. I think the Canadian dollar right now is at 78 cents US, so it's not that bad. I mean, even if you're half of the major mark, like you know, the powerful countries, the United States, if your money's worth half of what theirs is, or 3/4 of what theirs is, you're still sitting pretty. But all I know is by the time the 80s rolled around, or by the time I had enough sense to know anything, or time to help out with my aging father's property in Jamaica, the dollar was, I think my father was retiring at that time, and the Jamaican dollar was like 20-1 at that time. It's way worse now. But all I'm saying is, who would trust American society or Canadian society with telling them that we need a vaccine? Because let's just say we get the vaccine. There's been so much said about it. Some people are saying that you can get the vaccine and it will last for a time, but you'll have to get it again, kind of like the flu shot. Then they were saying you could get the vaccine, but you have to get 2 shots in your arm, and you have to get it between 25 and 27 days for seniors, and for everybody else, you had to get it within 33 days. So you get one, you got to get the next one, kind of like the tuberculosis, which was like, I think 7 days or 14 days, I can't remember. But the bottom line is you had to get 2. Now it's saying that even if you get it, or a lot of people are saying that if you, like, the science is showing that you could possibly still be a carrier of the virus, even if it doesn't affect you. And then they're saying that they're waiting for a vaccine, and that's everybody. You thought that was everybody, but it's not everybody, because there's not a vaccine for children apparently until, and this is in the States, mind you, until summer or late summer or late spring, early summer, or whatever it is. And judging by the rollout of the rapid test, considering that we're just getting the rapid test in the GTA, and Dr. Fauci in the States and Donald Trump and the rest of them were all talking about this rapid test maybe last May, and we're just getting it now. So how long do you think it's going to take for the Canadian kids to get this vaccine that's good for them? Why should we trust it? I mean, there's so many things that have been talked about as far as the vaccine is concerned that coincide with a lot of religious beliefs. Now, there are a lot of Christians who are waiting patiently for the Lord to come back. There's a lot of Christians who believe what the Bible says. There are a lot of people who believe that these are end times and things are changing rapidly and they're going to affect everyone. Some people believe that the vaccine is a Luciferian vaccine, and that means there's some kind of luminescence in the thing where they can warn you or some whatever, and they'll know whether you had the vaccine, whether you want to admit it or not. But the bottom line is, what I'm saying is, there's a reason why black people don't trust when society says this is good for you or this is bad for you. It is not something that we need to get over. It is something that needs to be remedied and stopped. But please, stop treating us like we're idiots. Now, some of us probably are idiots. I could be one of those. But there's a lot of educated black people. We don't need you to spend $6.8 million on a task force to manipulate us, or to get Drake to tell everybody to take a vaccine, or anybody else who's popular in society. We don't need Jay-Z to tell us, hey, yo, black people, get this, it's Young Hove. Get this vaccine and you're going to die. We don't need, that's probably the worst Jay-Z impression ever. But you understand what I'm saying. What's this task force? Just help us. Just help us. Just let us have access to education. Let us have access to the good paying jobs. When you're qualified for a job and we interview for that job, give us a shot. I don't want to be on anybody's quota. The last thing I want to do is get a job because you had a quota for black people. I don't want to be your token black guy at anywhere. So please keep this in mind. And another thing, you may be wondering how I stand on Black Lives Matter. I don't stand on Black Lives Matter. I believe in justice. I don't believe in social justice. I believe in justice for everyone equally. But of course, we are on the planet Earth. So when is that going to happen? Let's see. I have a belief system that comes from my nature and my nurture. I have a nature. I have an understanding. I have stereotypes. I have hang-ups that I have due to my education or lack thereof. I have hang-ups and stereotypes and funny ways of looking at things because of how I was treated when I was educated, or I have those things because of the way or the type of family that I grew up in, or the relationships that I've been in or am in, or maybe the things that have happened to me. I'm just being honest with you or straight up with you. If you were bitten by a snake, and you saw a snake come across your path, you might be apprehensive, or you might jump on that snake and kill it, or you might run in the other direction. So just understand that we are a product of our environment. We are a product of our families. We are a product of our experience in our education and a whole bunch of other things. So I wish we could do away with Black community. I wish we could do away with Black History Month and so on and so forth. But that's for another podcast. Anyhow, thank you for listening to You Probably Right podcast. And if you don't agree with me, yeah, you're probably right. You have your own opinion because you're your own person, right? Anyhow, take care. Thanks for tuning in.